you note our room change. We have a joint meeting with the House Higher Ed budget. So we will be meeting in 112 North. So note that we will be having a joint meeting with them tomorrow. And then Thursday, we have a hearing, a bill hearing, and then a presentation from Amira Learning. Next week, today we're just getting a preview of the budget that's going to be coming to us. Next week, we have 3 days of budget hearings to dig in. Today's just going to be a high-level overview of what's coming to us from the House. So today we're just going to hear what the House did as it relates to education bills, to give us a preview of what's headed our way, and then just an overview of the budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to, is Jennifer or Matt going to go first? Oh, Tamara's going to go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. You should have a memo from the revisor's office that has a chart with all of the non-budget education-related House bills that have passed as of today and have been referred to a Senate committee or should be soon. The House Education Committee has had 3 bills pass the House. The first 2 are K-12 and the third is higher education. The first one is House Bill 2033 and it relates to approved at-risk programs. The bill would include programs and services provided by nonprofit organizations accredited by the International Multisensory Structured Language Education Council as an approved at-risk program. The second one is House Bill 2102. This is actually a substitute bill. And this bill would allow for advanced enrollment of military students if a parent will be stationed in Kansas, and it would also correct a citation to federal law in an interstate compact. And the third bill, the higher ed bill, is House Bill 2185, and this one would amend the Kansas National Guard Educational Assistance Act and the eMERGE program. In addition to those 3 bills, the House Higher Ed Budget Committee also passed one bill, House Bill 2120, which would authorize the State Board of Regents to sell 2 pieces of real property. Additionally, on the back of the memo, you can see there are 3 additional bills that have passed out of the House committee but have not yet passed the House floor. So those are not yet in the Senate, but they could be. So I just wanted to make you aware of those. And that's all I have for you today.
Committee, obviously, if we decide to take these up, we'll do a deeper dive, but are there any initial questions for Tim? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tamara, on that first bill, on House Bill 2033, so when it says an approved at-risk educational program, that would be put on the State Board of Education's approved list, or is this then directing the State Board of Education to add it to their approved list?
Yes, so currently you are correct that the law requires the state board to identify and approve certain at-risk programs, and this would add the programs that meet these qualifications to that list.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's more than one?
It's any program from an organization that is accredited by the International Multisensory Structured Language Accrediting or Education Council, excuse me.
Oh, okay. So that's more than I thought. I thought it was a program, but it's a particular programs that are accredited by this particular organization. Is that correct?
Yes, and I will be perfectly honest with you. I have a limited exposure to these bills at the moment, but if we have a hearing on this, I will be happy to dig in deeper.
I'm sure you will.
Any other questions for Tamara at this point? Senator Petty.
Sorry. So then on that 2102, is that a mistake that was made by us, potentially, or left out from our compact, on our teacher compact?
This is the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children, and there is just, I believe it says chapter and it should say section or vice versa. That's my understanding of the error.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next looks like Jennifer's up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Light. I'm the K-12 fiscal analyst for KLRD. In front of you, you have two pieces of paper from me, one in a lovely pink and one that is what we are using as the bill explainer as it goes to the floor. So this is on the white packet in front of you. This is every adjustment that was done from House Bill 2007 by the time it left House Appropriations to go to the floor in the education function section alone. So this is just for any agency that is within the education function. That includes the Kansas State Department for Education, the School for the Blind, the School for the Deaf, the State Library, and the State Historical Society, and then all of the Board of Regents. So the Board of Regents, the individual universities, tech and community colleges all fall within the post-secondary education system. So as the chair has already indicated, there will be some budget hearings next week on some of these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the shorthand, the pink document in front of you, to kind of highlight more specifically for the agencies that are not going to be in front of this committee. In general, the post-secondary education system is going to be heard in front of Senate Ways and Means, and so they're not in front of you all. So I'm going to run through a couple of the things that Brianna Horton, who is the fiscal analyst for the post-secondary system, thought you may be interested in. On the first page, there is the Technical Colleges Operating Grant for two-year colleges. This has been funded for the past 3 years, and there was a bill created. They added $7 million for fiscal year 2026. There's the Washburn Operating Grant, which has historically received $14 million SGF, and then this is an additional $3.3 million on top of that. That's item number 8. Item number 10 is Blueprint for Literacy. So the original ask was for $10 million in fiscal year 2026. As it stands currently in the budget, it is at $2 million in ARPA funds for fiscal year 2026. Top of page 2 on item 13 is the Kansas Campus Restoration Act, which deletes the transfer of $13.7 million SGF to the Campus Restoration Fund for 26. This is due to the 2024 legislative, I believe that's Senate Bill 18, it may be Senate Bill 8, which passed. In the Department of Education, which is on pages 2 and 3, I'm not going to go into those in depth today because we are going to have a hearing on that next week, but you may be asked between now and then, and as it stands currently, there is a $10 million increase in special education for both fiscal year 25 or 26, and then it carries through to 2027 as part of the maintenance of effort. So that may be a question you're asked. I did want to highlight that as it stands now, there is a $10 million increase in 26 for special education. In Emporia State University on page 3, there is legal expenses in 26. So they added $2.2 million for costs associated with that. The Historical Society is also on page 3. They are adding, the House's version of the bill that passed over to the Senate includes an increase of $86,000 for capital tour guides and elevator attendants. These attendants were previously underneath the Department of Administration. They're moving them to the Historic Society because that is in a discussion between the Department of Administration and the Historical Society. They decided it made more sense for the FTE to be underneath the Historical Society since they have the other tour guides. So they're just moving them from one agency to another. On page 4, we have K-State University, or K-State. Brianna wanted me to specifically talk about the Veterinary Medical Center. In 26, there is an operating adjustment of $2 million in SGF. Top of page 5 is the School for the Blind and School for the Deaf. We will be hearing from these agencies next week in a more deeper dive into the actual budgets. But as of right now, in 26 for the School for the Blind, they are adding money to continue abating asbestos and to replace a gas line in 26. And in the School for the Deaf, there is a deletion of $156,000 from a specific account, and they are replacing that with the same amount in the operating expenditures account, so it can be used in a more all-over function instead of just being used specifically for the language assessment program. Then in 26, they have increases for utility tunnel repairs and to replace a roof and to continue with the asbestos. So, but those two will be going into, you'll have the agencies here next week, as well as Amanda Prosser, who's the fiscal analyst for them. In the state library, the important thing here is that the state grants and aid has changed in 26. So in last year's session, the legislature chose to add a base amount for funding that was going out to the libraries. And that was done at $1,000 for each library. That's on top of the per capita amount that goes out in the state grants and aid. What the House did is they removed that base in 26. So the per capita amounts would remain as they are, but the base that was included last year would no longer be in the base in 26. Bottom page 5 is University of Kansas. Top of page 6 is the Med Center. And that's got an additional $1.9 million in the specialty medical student loan program. And that's combining the OBGYN and the medical scholarships and loan psychiatry accounts together. And then that's an additional $1.9 million on top of that. So, and then Wichita State has a $4.5 million SGF for aviation research. And that is a high-level overview of what has happened in the budget on the House side. But we did give you the full breakdown and the full shorthand, so if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to talk about it, but that is kind of just where we stand in the education field as we move the budget through to the Senate side. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to stand for questions.
So Jennifer, just came from appropriations a little bit ago. Why was I thinking the WSU research was 5 million instead of 4.5? I could be remembering that wrong.
I would have to defer to Brianna on that. I'd be happy to check back into that and make sure that there wasn't a difference between the two documents, but
Well, let's just double check, because I'm
happy to double check that for you.
that was 5 million, but I just want to make sure I'm accurate. Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the overview. And my question is, as far as this 10 million more for special education, where does that put us in percentage-wise of the 92%?
Madam Chair, I have that if I can just go grab it.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, in fiscal year 2025, we are at 601 million SGF, or $601 million for special education. That is 75.4% of the excess costs. By adding the $10 million in 26, that puts us at $611 million, which puts us at 73.2% for excess costs in 26.
Did you have anything else, Senator Starnes? Okay. Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Jennifer. And as we know, that is an average, right? Because all districts have different amounts that go to them regarding what they'd have. So maybe my district might have 58 and somebody else might have 100%, correct?
That is the statewide excess cost percentage calculation.
Right,
Yes.
so that's an estimate. I mean, an average. Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you talk a little bit about the Blueprint for Literacy? And I know that was a program we started last year, and what did we put into it last year? And with this $2 million, where are we? Can I kind of get an overview on that?
Madam Chair, the money for the Blueprint for Literacy was all done through the Kansas Board of Regents. So I know there was money appropriated for last year. I believe it was 10 million appropriated last year for the Blueprint for Literacy. They did come back with a request for 10 million for this year, or for 26, not for this year. Last year's legislature budgeted $10 million for Blueprint for Literacy for fiscal year 25. For 26, the request was $10 million. The House has got it at 2.0 million ARPA instead of 10 million SGF.
And committee, just so you're aware, when you see the ARPA, that's ARPA interest that we've earned on the money. So currently, we were told in Ways and Means a little bit ago that there's still funds in our ARPA account that are drawing interest until the agencies draw down those funds, and it's about $2 million a month in interest that we're getting on those ARPA funds. So that's where that $2 million from the Blueprint for Literacy comes. So, other questions? Senator Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we phase in Blueprint for Literacy and phase out whatever we've been doing for reading and literacy, how much money have we been spending on reading programs that we will no longer be spending as we switch to Blueprint for Literacy?
So, Madam Chair, I don't have a number for how much KSDE has been spending on their funding for literacy. The Blueprint for Literacy is not, the Blueprint for Literacy is to help teachers learn how to teach the new, the updated versions for literacy. So I don't know, I cannot speak for the agency as to whether or not they're going to discontinue what they are doing now within the KSD programs for reading. But the Blueprint for Literacy, all of the funding for that goes through the universities. None of that money is going through KSD. They're working in conjunction with KSDE, but none of that money for the Blueprint for Literacy is going through. I'd be happy to get you the number of dollars that the KSDE has been spending in the last several years. Would you like the last 3 years?
Sure, that sounds good. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Yeah, the Blueprint is different, and we need to make sure we understand the difference. The State Department of Education has been training teachers in what's called letters, and then there's like a seal that you can earn, micro-credentials that are part of, but the focus of the Blueprint is training our pre-service teachers in the science of reading and our current in-service teachers that are currently teaching to get them the training to do the science of reading. And so it's kind of two different bites at that apple, so to speak. So it gets confusing, but we'll get that information and get that straight for everybody. Anything else? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Jennifer. And this is maybe a request for me. In the past, we've had, and I know budgeting is different this year because the legislature did our own budget. So this is the legislative budget and then the adjustments. Is there a way to get kind of that legislative budget, the governor's budget, and then how the committee made changes to look at all three of those?
So, Madam Chair, there is not currently a document that KLRD has that does all three of them side by side. I can talk with the KLRD fiscal team as to how we can get that. When we present the budgets next week, we will have a sheet that has what the governor's recommendations for enhancements, the differences from the original House Bill 2007. We will have that piece of paper for you to be looking at as we walk through where we're at currently. But I am happy to look into how we could do that.
Senator Petty.
Jennifer, on the state library, when under the state grants in aid to libraries, could you provide for us, so you mentioned about the fact that this, the libraries receive a per person amount, and this was a $1,000 for each eligible library. But it would be helpful, I think, to provide that this You referred to it as new, although it had been there, and then it was taken away, and then it was last year. So last year, there was a process that actually the Ways and Means Committee did look at for what this would provide and why it was important. So I would hope that that could be shared.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I do have a one-page document that was part of the budget summary for the state library that I'd be happy to share that talks through the state grants and aid, talks through what the per capita was. For last year, it was 28 cents on a per capita. In last year's session, we moved it to 30 cents. This current version still maintains that 30-cent per capita. And then last year, they added the $1,000 per library base. That is what's being removed. It's just the base. The per capita would still be there, would still be at the 30 cents as it is currently. But I'd be happy to provide more information with that one page.
I appreciate it.
So Jennifer, could you just very quickly walk through how to look at this document as committee members take this with them and prepare for next week's budget hearing, just especially for our new members, how to look at that and interpret what that actually means?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. So the front page of this document is a high-level overview of the entirety of each of the agencies. So you can see it's got Board of Regents, Department of Education, all the way down through for every single section that is within the education function of the state budget. Then the columns that are next to it that say fiscal year 2025, the SGF and all funds are where the budget stands as it left the House floor for education. So in fiscal year 2025, at the bottom under the grand total, you can see that in the education function, there is $11.5 billion with $6.3 billion SGF. The same is there in 27 or 26 with a grand total of $11 billion all funds with $6.2 billion SGF. And then in 27, the reason you see 27 is because the department, or because we do the consensus estimates for state foundation aid and several buckets, including special education but the consensus estimates that I was here talking to you about a couple weeks ago that I am drawing blanks on all the names of, those are factored into the budget for 27 as well. It's the first time they appear, so that's why you see a 27 section for this function. If you flip to page 2, we start breaking things down by the agency themselves. So on page 2, we have the Board of Regents, and you can see that it starts with fiscal year 2025. And we have the agency as the agency's request was, because that's what the starting line was when the special committee met. And then we have House Bill 2007 as introduced. So that is what the committee from the interim's decisions were. And then we have the sub for House Bill 2007, which is where it stands after it crossed the House floor or the committee a whole. So we start with the approved amount, which is what the legislature had approved last year. And you can see the two bills that were there for the appropriations last year was 2024 Senate Bill 28 and House Bill 2551. That's the mega bill and the omnibus bill. Then we have the reappropriations listed out. Then you can see there's a grade section that says supplemental request. These are the supplements that were requested by the agency for 2025. So you can see that, for example, the Excel and CTE, the agency had requested $358,000 for that. That in House Bill 2007, there was no money allotted for it. And that as it passed out of the House, there is money back in for that one. So if you see the dashes, those mean zeros. So there's nothing in there for that. Underneath the other changes sections, you can see that there are a lot of negative numbers. So this is anything that is a negative number on this document will be in red, just to call attention to the fact that it's negative. A lot of the stuff in the other changes section are the other adjustments that you'd see as we were discussing each of these budgets. Each of these line items is something that was called out in the budget summary document. So if you go and look at the budget summary documents online, or if you'd like me to send them to you, I'd be happy to do that. But you'd be able to see each of these line items called out with an explanation for what's going on. So the titles on the left-hand side do correlate to the documents that we provide. In fiscal year 26 for Board of Regents, you can see again that there's the approved for 2025 because they did not have an approved budget for 26. So we're using that as the baseline for 26. Then we have the I think we lost, I just didn't see the enhancement request line. The enhancement request line, which is all of the enhancements that were requested from the agency. And again, if you walk across, you can see that the House Bill 2007, as introduced, in general, did not bring forward any of the enhancements. And then the sub for House Bill 2007 then shows which ones were put back in by the House. At the top of each section, when it says fiscal year, if you go across on that dark gray section, so on page 2, where it says fiscal year 25 or fiscal year 26, those numbers are the entirety of the numbers for those fiscal years for that agency. So the yellow line shows the agency, the darker gray line that says the fiscal year shows the total amount, and then it walks through the process of what was included and what was removed. Be happy to stand for any questions on that.
And Jennifer, the arrows on the right, those are showing whether an increase, an up arrow, or decrease down arrow between 2007 is introduced and the sub. Is that correct? And the sub for 2007, that's showing the increase.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, so that's what those little arrows are on the side. Thank you for that explanation. Questions? Senator Petty.
I'll just go back to that arrow. So even though an arrow may be going up and it does show a positive number, it doesn't necessarily correlate with what was originally in the budget.
So you could always see what was originally in the budget. So for example, I'm going to go to education because I know that one a lot better than the Board of Regents. So for example, in the other, so on page 4, underneath other changes, underneath the reappropriations lapse, line 107, you can see that in House Bill 2007, as introduced, there was a $2.1 million decrease. However, part of those reappropriations were reinstated, and so therefore there is still a decrease happening in that section, but it is less than what was originally amounted, which is why there is an up arrow. Did that help or make things more confusing?
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there any way we could get a list of the acronyms that are used just to make sure that we're
Absolutely
accurately following what the acronyms are?
I will get you a list of the acronyms.
Committee, I know if you haven't looked at these very often, it's tough to digest and interpret. So as you're looking at this in preparation for next week's budget hearings, if there's a way we can present the information that's helpful to you, whether that's a graph or could we get this, side by side, please let us know, because We want to make sure that everyone understands what we're looking at and the trend lines. And so if there's a way that will help you understand and digest it, let us know, and we'll try to make that available for everyone. So, Senator Petty.
So, Madam Chair, I just want to understand completely. So in this committee, we aren't going to be doing the Board of Regents, but we are going to be doing the other the other education items.
We will be doing, in this committee next week, we'll be doing KSDEs and the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf. We are not going to go over the Historical Society or the State Library. Those are pretty flat, and so we will not look at those. They are included in your information because they are in the education budget, but we will not be having specific hearings on those two.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, hopefully this gets your juices flowing for turnaround and where we're headed with that, and give you an overview of what we will be digging into in the next couple of weeks. Remember, tomorrow we are in a different location in a joint meeting.